Nobody made off from patch 8 better than the Warlock. So in this video, I'll be ranking the best subclass for the Warlock on a tier list in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, they got themselves new spells, such as Booming Blade and Shadow Blade, which alone became a new meta in itself due to the Resonant Stone doubling the Shadow Blade's damage, which can become a 4d8. But another cool thing is actually the Hexblade Warlock gets a unique spell, which we'll be breaking down in this video, a Staggering Smite. Each of the different subclasses comes with unique spells that they get for each of them, so this can actually be pretty defining, as some get much better spells than others, like the Hexblade and the Fiend getting great spell selection. But the other thing is the Warlock actually has some very interesting ways in how their spells work, since they don't get traditional spell slots, they get packed slots. And with Warlock spell slots, you only get maximum level 1. So with Shield spell, it doesn't get upcast, so you're always going to get 5 armor class. So if you're using a level 5 spell slot to get a +5 to armor class when you could have been using a level 1, this was where things get a little bit tricky. So I will be factoring in a bit of multi-classing into this, as the Warlock is the most popular multi-class due to its attack from the packed weapon stacking outside of honor mode. But I'm also going to be considering this for honor mode and just the overall power level of each of these subclasses. I'm first going to start off with the Fiend. Now, with this subclass, we get the ability to get temporary health points when we reduce a target to 0 health points. Getting your charisma modifier as temporary health is nice. However, one of the best early game items for the Warlock actually does something that'll override this and give you less health. So it is a little bit difficult to utilize. The unique spells that they get access to is Burning Hands and Command, which are two actually really good spells. Command being very useful, especially as we can get an item later on in the game, which allows us to cast this as a bonus action. And Burning Hands is an alright early game damage option. Early on, the Fiend is fairly weak compared to the other subclasses. That is, until we make it to level 2 or 3, which is giving us the Scorching Ray level 2 spell. This is only accessible to the Fiend, and it's actually a really good spell. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more powerful. Again, all Warlocks get access to Shadow Blade, which is a massive buff, and it's a bonus action. You can do a 2d8 of psychic damage. That can be doubled. You can pair it up with a lot of different things, but one of the best things early game for damage is if you're playing a Warlock, using Scorching Ray and Hold Person, because you can get free critical hits on Scorching Ray at close range if you use Hold Person first. So that is a pretty nice combination. They also get access to the Blindness spell, which is not accessible to the other Warlocks, but we really care about the Scorching Ray. Level 5 is also quite nice for the Fiend because they get access to the Fireball spell here, which is obviously quite devastating, as you can get a lot of damage off with that. And they also get access to the Stinking Cloud spell, which is okay. Not really my first choice, especially when at the same level we also get access to Hunger of Hadar, but no other class gets Fireball, and that is really good, especially once you have your Hunger of Hadar set up. You can just cast Fireballs from outside of the range. Level 6 is when we get the Dark One's Unlock, adding a 1d10 bonus to an ability check, which is actually a really nice ability, and this is great because it gives us some outside of combat utility. The Fiend is pretty fun. Fire damage focus and getting that ability there is nice. Upon hitting level 7, we get further fire spells with Wall of Fire and Fire Shield, which will allow you to do fire damage to attackers. I think Wall of Fire is a pretty decent crowd control spell, especially when we consider that Hunger of Hadar does not scale up past level 3, so at level 4 you're probably better using a Wall of Fire well placed to get more damage out. And level 9, we get one of the best spells in the game with Cone of Cold. Now, what's cool about this is we get this spell slot, and also the Hexblade gets it too. This is one of the few spells that's shared between different subclasses, and it's extremely powerful, so this is worth taking. The Fiend is one of the best spellcasters, as they also get a great spell list. You get Flame Strike too, although I'm kind of hesitant to use this, as it's not the best damage option. Doing a 5d6 of fire and radiant damage is cool and all, but 8d8 of cold is a little bit better, especially considering that this can be doubled. And we can also grab a Mage Hand to throw a water bottle to set that up for free and get upwards of 128 damage. And once we hit level 10, we actually get a very good ability with the Fiendish Resilience. You can choose a damage type and become resistant to it, and you can pick a new one per short rest, which is great because you get your spell slots back at short rest. If you know you're getting into a specific fight, you can always be swapping around your resistances, which in and of itself is fantastic. Now, unfortunately, there's nothing unique past level 10 for each class, so it's one you could multi-class with, but at level 11, you do get the extra 11 spell slot, extra level 5th spell slot. So we got ourselves an amazing spell list with Scorching Ray, Fireball, Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, Cone of Cold, Flame Fire Shield. We got our Fiendish Resilience. Now, I actually recommend using slashing or piercing damage resistances, because there's oftentimes you're going to be going against those types of damage. But even so, if you're going against like Answer, you can get lightning resistances. If you're going to the House of Hope, you get fire resistances. If you're going against Mind Flares, you got psychic damage resistance, which is near impossible to find in this game. And then you even got like radiant or force damage resistance, depending on what you're going against. So this is the class that if you're really if you're on a subsequent playthrough and you know the game decently well and you want something new, this is a great Warlock to play alongside. However, I don't think it's the strongest one here. So I'm actually going to put this one just into the A tier. It is a strong Warlock, but we do have something else a little bit more powerful in particular ways. But yeah, this one getting some good outside of combat utility with the Dark One's own luck, adding that 1d10 to an ability check is quite nice. Getting your charisma modifier and health can be useful too. Although it's only going to be like a 5, 6, potentially 7 health points at max level, it's still nice to be able to resist that much damage, especially if you get it every single turn and keep reducing and using that as almost a resource that gets replenished. So this is a pretty good class overall. And I guess I should mention the Fiend actually multi-classes really well with the Paladin, especially if you like an Oathbreaker, because it's now an Oathbreaker that can do fireballs, and they also get like the access to the Dark One's old luck if you do a 6/6 split, and the extra attack stacking is nice. The Fiend's great just due to the spells that you get at early levels that you may not get from another class. Now we're moving on to the Hexblade. Now this one is interesting in how it works. The newest one in patch 8. At level 1, it's the best single level dip in the entire game now, which previously used to be like the Tempest or War Domain Cleric, but now this one's absolutely the best. Allowing you to use Charisma modifier for weapon attacks with only a single level dip is fantastic, especially if you're going to multi-class like a Bard, a Paladin, anything like that. It can be extremely useful, and you also have a chance to apply the Hexblade's Curse on the enemy, which gives you a damage equal to your proficiency bonus, so typically a +4 to damage, and you get increased critical hit chance. And then at level 6, we get something special where you can raise ghosts out of the ground. You also get medium armor proficiency, which is great because the best armors in the game are medium armor, shields, and martial weapon proficiencies. And then you use your, again, charisma modifier for attack rolls. But what's great about this subclass is you get access to some cool spells that we don't normally get access to. So you get the Shield and Wrathful Smite. As I mentioned previously, this actually multi-classes well, because if you mix this with a class that doesn't get shield, let's say the Bard Lock, a very popular multi-class, you can use your level 1 Bard spell slot to use shield, which saves you big time when you're like, let's say a level 12 Warlock who's using one of their 3 spell slots on a shield spell. Not really the best use of it, but that's why it multi-classes so well. Wrathful Smite's okay, it just adds some 1d6 extra damage and eats up your bonus action concentration. Never really use this, but it could be okay if you really need burst damage until we reach level 4. Or level 7 when we get level 4 spells. Now, I just want to note that if you pick the Hexblade, you still have to pick Pact of the Blade if you want that extra attack. I get a lot of comments all the time, misunderstanding. It will actually bind Pact weapon, combine it with the bind Hex weapon, they become the same thing. So just a little heads up there. But honestly, Shadow Blade is so very powerful on this build, and we get a particular spell a little bit later on that pairs very well with it. And also this class works really well with Darkness and not even Hunger Fadar, because Darkness actually empowers our Shadow Blade to give it advantage on all attack rolls, which is huge, giving us an increased critical hit chance. Now the Hexblade spell selection is not amazing earlier on, because we get Blur, which is not that great. We get Blinding or Branding Smite, which is an okay option, because this will allow you to turn targets that are turning invisible back to being visible. That's okay. We also get Elemental Weapon, which is okay. It's a concentration, adds 1d4 bonus elemental damage, which has some uses, but the Drake Throat Glaive can do that without a concentration. And finally, we get Blink, which who cares? It's not really a spell anyone really uses that much. If you do, cool, but not one you're going to pick the Warlock for. Level 6, this is when we get the Accursed Spectre. This is actually really good. Now, I just want to put a little asterisk here because I get a lot of questions regarding this. If you have Call the Weak, it's not going to trigger that. So the Illithid ability Call the Weak, it can take out enemies and they won't trigger this. So if you want to use this with Call the Weak, turn Call the Weak off, or you have to take or deal enough damage that it would normally eliminate the enemy. So if you have Call the Weak on and a target's got 10 health points and you inflict 11, you'll get it. But if you inflict 1 point of damage and Call the Weak kills the enemy, you don't get the Accursed Spectre. That's just briefly how it works. But these are great because you can actually spawn multiple at a time. You can actually get like 5 or 6 of them sometimes in certain combat encounters. They just soak up hits for your team. They deal a little bit of chip damage. But the best part is they can break concentrations on enemy spellcasters, and they typically will they'll typically do their attacks on those targets. So they're good. It's just a nice boost for our damage, and we don't have to think much about it because we're not expending resources on it. Now, the Hexblade's actually a little glitched in a good way. It gets access to the spells that we get from being an Arch Fey, so Dominate Beast, who you're probably never going to select, although it's an enchantment spell, so it can be used with Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. And we also get Greater Invisibility, which you likely would use, and it's an illusion spell, so it also can be used with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. That's a really good option to get. However, these aren't the 2 spells we're supposed to get. This is the 2 we were supposed to get. So the Phantasmal Killer here, which is okay, doing psychic damage to the enemy. Now, Staggering Smite is very interesting. Now, I've had some arguments with people in the past. I personally am just going to explain why I think it's good. You don't have to use it. I don't like also to use these action, bonus action, and concentration smites. But hear me out on this. So, Shadow Blade can do 4d8 of damage, as we've previously established. With Staggering Smite, you can take a 4d8, add a 4d6, and then double it. That's essentially a lot of damage. I can't even begin to explain. You can hit over 200 damage on a single attack with this. Don't use this often. I like to take it just in case there's a boss where I'm doing calculations on their health and I'm like, okay, I can probably nuke them with this one attack here. It's good. It can break your concentration, so I wouldn't use it if you want to use Darkness or Hunger of Hadar. But if you don't have a concentration, this is great because you can stagger enemies, which isn't really the main purpose. It's that extra 46 of psychic damage, which again is doubled, so it's actually pretty good damage. You don't have to take it, but I'm just going to mention it. This is the only class that gets this, the Hexblade Warlock. It's just like a panic button. You need that burst damage. This gives it to you. And remember how earlier I said the Hexblade spell slots suck? Well, they do when you're at level 3 or level 5 because their early game spells suck. However, they get Banishing Smite, which previously you have to be a bard and take level 10 of the Sword Bard to get magical secrets and take this. Previously, it's a Paladin spell, but same as Staggering Smite, actually. These are both Paladin spells. The Paladin doesn't get access to because they don't get level 20 spells. They get up to level 20 in Baldur's Gate 3, so this is really good, actually, because it scales so well. Our previous one was a 4d6. This is a 5d10, so a lot more damage, possibly banishing a target if they have less than 50 health points. This is huge. It's just another boost to our damage. It's not going to be as crazy. It's not going to be as crazy as the Staggering Smite because, one, you're going to be burning your higher level spell slots, whereas Staggering Smite will now upcast and get an extra damage die, but it can be doubled in its damage. So on average, you're actually getting more out of Staggering Smite, believe it or not, than Banishing Smite. So I just want to put that one out there. And we also get Cone of Cold, as previously established. Very good spell, and that's the only spell that's shared between two different subclasses of the Warlock. And time for one of the most ridiculously silly abilities in Baldur's Gate 3 with Armor of Hexes. When a creature you've cursed with a Hexblade's curse attacks you, possibly nullify the attack as a reaction. You have a 50% chance of taking no damage at all from an attack. That is really good. And you can use that as a reaction, so you can actually choose to not do that too. And that's where this is really, really good. The Blade Singing Wizard gets something comparable at level 10 with the Song of Defense, allowing you to use 5 times your spell slot level to reduce the damage. But that's eating up a spell slot. If you want to reduce the damage by like 30, you'd be eating up your level 6 spell slot, which is crazy. With this, it's free. You just use your reaction. Very, very good ability. And this actually boosts the Hexblade up very high because not only do they get amazing spell selection at later levels and great abilities in the early game, they get unique stuff, they get a lot of extra melee damage and also spell casting damage. It's hard to deny that the Hexblade is an absolute powerhouse because of all the combined effects that you get. Again, Shadow Blade is so crazy because with that level 5 spell slot, you can get that back with a short rest, or you can even use... What's crazier is you can actually just use a staff here because these have free cast, and you can use the free cast from the staff to give yourself this here. So that turns out, and then we get our Staggering Smite to do upwards, as you can see there, 64 damage. This becomes even crazier when you factor in other items, like if you were to use the Strange Conduit Ring, which gives you another 1d4 of psychic damage on your attacks when you have a concentration, and then you can put a concentration on like your hold person or hold monster, I guess just hold monster in this case, and then go ahead with some very devastating attacks. So that 64 damage is doubled because of the Resonant Stone, which you can get in Act 2. So yeah, the Hexblade is crazy. Burst damage. It's got some great spells. Everything about this is amazing. So the Hexblade, I think you guys knew that it would be going in the S tier when you click this video. So yeah, it's just an absolute powerhouse. Defensively, offensively, great spell list, great melee attack. It's the best melee attacker Warlock and the best spellcaster, minus the Fiend. But this just is a much better one with medium armor and better with the Armor of Hexes. Next is one of the coolest with the Great Old One, or you may know this as the Goo Warlock, a great old one. So this one is you pledge something unthinkable to an unspeakably ancient entity, in which in return furnish you with power of cerebral entropy and control. It's cool. It's actually really metal. I love it. But the abilities actually don't really translate very well. Now, with this, we get the Mortal Reminder. When you land a critical hit against a creature, that creature and any nearby enemies must do a Wisdom saving throw or become frightened until the end of their next turn. Now, people hype this ability up all the time, but if you've played a Great Old One Warlock, just think about how many times you've actually triggered this. It's actually a small area of effect, and there's actually a little bit of a bug with this that I want to break down. So, the Mortal Reminder, whenever let's say you hit somebody with a critical hit with your Eldritch Blast, it's a 3-meter radius, which is a little bit smaller than Fireball, and it's that radius where the enemies will become potentially frightened if they fail the Wisdom saving throw. Now, that Wisdom saving throw is also a little bit misleading because let's say you multi-class for whatever reason and took the Great Old One and the Fighter, and you went Eldritch Knight. It would actually calculate on your intelligence. For whatever reason, it would use that spellcasting modifier for the enemy to do their saving throw against the Wisdom. So it's a little weird. However, you're probably not going to be multi-classing, so I'm not going to be considering that in the factor. It's just something to note with this. you're likely not going to get critical hits off as much as you think you would, because the enemies have to be really close together, and that's not always going to be the case. And they're also likely to succeed the wisdom saving throw. So again, if you played a great old one Warlock, just think about how many times you've actually gotten this to trigger on a playthrough. Sometimes you can get actually really lucky, and I guess that's really just dependent on your luck. But it's not going to be often that you get this to apply compared to what some people think happens. But nonetheless, great ability. And we also get access to Dissonant Whispers, which is nice, because if you get the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, you can then cast this as a bonus action spell. Same thing with Tasha's Hideous Laughter, although we don't want to use this with a level 5 spell slot, so that's just okay. And the spells we get at level 3 are Detect Thoughts, which is okay. Nothing to really pick this subclass for, and Phantasmal Force, which is okay. Again, not something we'd pick this class for. And level 5 spells, Bestow Curse. It's okay. And we also get the Slow spell, which is actually a decent one. You can target up 6 creatures, slow them, and their AC and Dexterity saves reduced by 2. Not like super game changer of a spell, but it's something. Now, our level 6 ability, Entropic Ward, is actually really nice. So as a reaction, you can give disadvantage on an attack roll against us, and if the attack misses, we get advantage on our next attack roll against the attacker. That's actually really good. Being able to apply disadvantage to an attacker, if you don't have like darkness set up, this is great. Although if you already have darkness and all that kind of set up, this is going to be really useful. And the way I play my Warlock, I like to hide out in my own darkness and use Shadowblade. So it may be helpful, but this is actually a really nice ability. I guess the thing I want to mention is it's very situational. Now, we actually don't get great spells here either. We get Dominate Beast and Ever's Black Tentacles, which is okay, but these are just fair. And when we hit level 9, we get the Dominate Person, which is another one we can use as a bonus action with the Band of Mystic Scoundrel and Telekinesis, which, not the best spell list, I'll be honest. And I will mention that there are some overlap in spells here. I did say previously that there's only some that overlap. I meant to say only spells that we want to take that overlap are like Cone of Cold. We don't really care too much about Dominate Person. You know, at level 10, we actually get some really nice abilities here. So I did mention previously, there's not many ways to get Psychic Resistance. It's really just the Warlock that has this. You get resistance to psychic damage at level 10, and Psychic Reflection. Your patron doesn't appreciate attempts on your mind. When you take psychic damage, your attacker takes the same damage. That's actually pretty nice. There's only a few times where you're going to be taking psychic damage, mostly just dealing with mind flayers. But hey, being able to counter them is a nice appreciated ability. Again, some very situational abilities here, and that Mortal Reminder critical hit is not the most reliable. Psychic damage you don't encounter often, and the Entropic Ward is the best ability here, actually, because getting the ability to turn an attack into disadvantage is really nice. But we got a very bad spell list here. Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Dissonant Whisper, Slow, Ever's Black Tentacles, Dominate Person, Telekinesis. These are all forgettable spells that we don't really care too much about, so it's one that's a little bit divisive, because I know there's a lot of people that really like the Great Old One, and as I mentioned, I think this is the coolest subclass when you look at the backstory of it. But I'm actually not going to be able to put this up in the A tier, just because as a Warlock, getting Scorching Ray, Fireball, Wall of Fire, Cone of Cold just gives you so much versatility when it comes to spell casting. With the Great Old One, it is obviously like enchantment and crowd control focused. However, you can get a lot of these spells if you're doing multi-classes, and even so, we don't care that much about those abilities. It's got those great abilities to, I guess, critically hit and potentially frighten targets, but at the end of the day, I don't think that that's really enough to put it above some of the other subclass here. And we finally are ending off with the Arch Fey, which did not translate from tabletop D&D as well as some of the other subclasses here. So, graced by a Lady or Lord of the Fey, you're imbued with all the sumptuous and scary qualities of patron's extraordinary realm. So you get the Fey Presence, which can charm or frighten nearby foes with the Feywild's beguiling, disturbing magics. That's cool, I guess. Being able to beguile or charm or frighten someone is nice, but not super crazy useful as a full-on action. Like, there's no times where you really want to be using this. There's better options we do have. You do get Fairy Fire and Sleep at level 1, which, again, these aren't really things that we'd be taking this spell class for. I like Sleep. I think this is an underrated spell, but I don't think it's good after levels like 3, whenever you can't put more than 3 goblins to sleep. At level 3, they get Calm Emotions and Phantasmal Force, which aren't spells that we really care for. However, Calm Emotions is actually pretty useful at the very start of the game with the Harpies. You can use this to help out our friends that may be under some emotional distress. For level 5 spells, we get Blink and Plant Growth. Whoop-de-doo. These are not that great when you consider the Fiend is getting Fireball at this level. Now, we do get a cool ability with Misty Escape here. Whenever we take damage, we can become invisible, and then on our next turn, we can cast Misty Step, though this will break our invisibility. Now, I just want you to consider one thing. If you were to play a Hexblade Warlock, you could equip a shield and medium armor and not have to even turn invisible, because you would likely not be taking as much damage due to having a higher armor class. So, yeah, that's just an okay choice. It is welcome, though. I do want to admit, at level 6, getting this ability is kind of nice when we don't have much else to play with. Now, level 7, we get, again, Dominate Beast and Greater Invisibility, but the Hexblade also gets access to these 2 spells, which they're not supposed to. So, yeah, not really a big plus here. I do want to mention, again, though, that you can do this as a bonus action with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. Now, level 9, this is possibly the most pathetic ability you can get. You get Dominate Person, which is whatever, but Seeming. Seeming. This is not a good spell. This guy's 4 members of your party. You can literally get a deluxe edition item if you got the deluxe edition in this game that can do that for your entire party without wasting one of your precious level 5 spell slots. And our final ability is Beguiling Defenses. You cannot be charmed. Again, whoop-de-doo. So again, this is a worse spell list than the great old one, which already doesn't have a great spell list. The Fey Presence is okay too. I mean, being able to charm or frighten targets. This, again, not a large area of effect. Cool VFX, though. There's not really anything else that uses that, so that is cool. But again, why would you ever want to use your entire action to do this ability? It's beyond me. Again, it just gets such bad spell selection, plant growth, which you can get by just multiclass with the Bard, which is one of the best multiclasses for this. Yeah, it's not good. I'll just be honest. This one is going in the C tier. So there you have it. As a little recap, we have the Hexblade, just amazing spell list, great defense, the best defensive. It just does everything it does well. With Cone of Cold, great weapon attacks. You get the Hexblade's Curse. You got Specters to help tank for your team. It's absurdly strong. Fiend, getting the temporary health is nice. You can also get those extra benefits. Choose a type of damage to become resistant to. It's not as tanky as Hexblade, but it comes close. And then we have the great old one again. Mortal Reminder not being as reliable. Not that great a spell list. And it's just... I don't know what it is, but the abilities that you do get from this just feel a bit lackluster compared to the other two, especially when you got like Armor of Hexes from the Hexblade and then also a Cursed Spectre. It just makes the great old one feel a lot worse in comparison. And then the Arch Fey, there's really no particular reason to ever choose this over the other subclasses. So that's my ranking. Let me know your thoughts. So in the comments, I'm always curious to hear what people think of these. And yeah, hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great day. We'll catch you in the next one.